We are stripping away the noise today and looking at life, and specifically the brutal, beautiful game of business through a very specific lens. I want you to picture a chessboard.
A classic opening.
It is. But stick with me. Most people, and I mean the absolute vast majority of us, are playing checkers. We're looking at the piece right in front of us.
Right.
We make a move, we react, an email comes in, we panic, a client complains, we scramble. We are playing one frantic move at a time, entirely reactive, entirely emotional.
Which is, in the grand scheme of things, how you lose. Or, I mean, at the very least, it's how you stay stagnant while feeling completely exhausted. Just running on a treadmill, not actually going anywhere on a track.
Exactly. But then you have the grandmasters, the people who seem to be playing a different game entirely. They aren't reacting to the moment. They are executing a sequence they planned 6 months ago. They are thinking 5 moves ahead. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We are diving into your next 5 moves. Master the Art of Business Strategy by Patrick Bet-David.
This is such a fascinating text because it bridges a gap that very few business books even try to cross.
Okay, what's that gap?
Well, usually you have these high-level academic strategy books, written by professors who've probably never sold a widget in their lives.
Right, it's all theory.
It's all theory. Or you get the hustle culture books that are all energy and, no framework. Patrick Bet-David, or PBD as he's known, he's writing from the trenches. His background creates this very specific type of authority that we really need to contextualize before we even get to the strategy itself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, talk about a backstory. We aren't talking about a guy who inherited a dealership or, went straight to an Ivy League school. We're talking about a guy who was a refugee.
Right. And that is absolutely foundational to his worldview. He fled Iran during the war, lived in a refugee camp in Germany for 2 years before finally coming to the U.S.
Wow.
He didn't start with a silver spoon. He started with a backdrop of absolute survival. And that just fundamentally shapes how you view risk, and it shapes how you view competition.
He served in the military too, the 101st Airborne, then worked selling gym memberships at Bally Total Fitness.
Which, I mean, if you know anything about sales, selling gym memberships in the 90s was the gladiator pit.
Oh, yeah?
If you could sell there, you could sell anything.
No kidding. And from there, he transitioned into the financial sector, eventually founding PHP Agency, a financial marketing organization, and then creating this massive media brand, Valuetainment.
And he describes his own journey as going from a hot-tempered sales guy who wanted to, fight everyone to a strategic CEO who wanted to outmaneuver everyone. And this book, it's basically the manual for that metamorphosis.
So what's the big idea?
The core premise is this 5 moves framework. It's the argument that success isn't binary. It's not just work hard, get rich.
Right.
It is a series of calculated steps or moves. The book covers 5, but for our deep dive today, we are going to focus intensely on the first 3 because PBD makes it very clear. If you don't master the first 3, moves 4 and 5, which are all about scaling and power plays, they're just going to crush you.
Okay, so the roadmap for today. Move 1 is master knowing yourself.
Yeah.
Move 2 is master the ability to reason. And move 3 is master building the right team. Our mission statement here is to move you, the listener, from that amateur mindset, reactive, emotional, flailing to the grandmaster mindset.
And that starts with what is, frankly, the most uncomfortable work of all. Move 1.
Master knowing yourself. Now, I know what everyone's thinking. Oh, great, another self-help cliche. Who do I want to be? I want to be rich, next question.
Right, yeah.
But PBD argues this isn't fluff. He says this is the single most practical business decision you can possibly make.
It is, because rich isn't a strategy. It's just a vague outcome. If you don't answer that question, who do you want to be? And I mean, honestly, you cannot build a strategy because you don't know the destination. The strategy for someone who wants to be Elon Musk, sleeping on the factory floor, 0 work-life balance, insane stakes, is fundamentally different from the strategy for someone who wants to run a profitable local bakery, make $200K a year, and coach their kids' Little League team.
He talks about the trap of binary answers. We tend to think you're either a billionaire success or you're a total failure.
Precisely. He introduces this concept of the spectrum. Not everyone needs to disrupt an industry. In fact, most people would be absolutely miserable if they tried. He tells this great story about a guy named Sean.
Okay.
Sean was an employee and a friend of PBD's. And he was miserable, constantly stressed because he was comparing himself to these massive tycoons on the cover of magazines.
He was playing a game he thought he should play.
Correct. But when PBD sat him down and really grilled him, I mean, really peeled back the layers, it turned out Sean didn't want the stress of being a CEO. He didn't want the pressure.
What did he want?
He realized he wanted to make about $150,000 a year, have low stress, and be present for his family.
And the moment he admitted that?
He won. He won because he finally aligned his strategy with his actual desire. He stopped trying to play the billionaire game with a corner store ambition, and his happiness just skyrocketed.
Wow.
And here's where it's really interesting. PDD offers a litmus test for the self-knowledge. He says envy is the ultimate indicator of a lie.
That one hit me hard when I read it. Envy is an indicator of a lie. Let's unpack that.
It's so profound. If you look at someone successful, say a tech mogul working 100 hours a week, and you feel that pang of envy, one of two things is happening.
Okay.
Either you genuinely want what they have, and you're just, frankly, too lazy to do the work to get it, or, and this is the big one, you are lying to yourself about what you actually want. If you truly knew that you valued family time and sanity over private jets, you wouldn't envy the billionaire. You'd look at their schedule and just say, no, thank you. That looks like an absolute nightmare.
So envy means you haven't settled on your own definition of success yet.
That's it. It puts the responsibility squarely back on you, the individual. It just removes all the victimhood.
But let's talk about what drives people who do want to reach that high end of the spectrum. Because for PBD, it wasn't just finding his passion or, doing what you love. It was something darker. He talks about pain as fuel.
This is a consistent theme you see in the lives of really high performers, and PBD leans into it heavily. He argues that while love and passion are sustainable long-term, nothing moves the needle initially, like shame and anger, if you process them correctly.
And he shares a deeply personal, almost cinematic story about this, a hospital incident with his father.
Yeah, this story really sets the emotional stakes for the whole book. So his dad has a heart attack. They're at the LA County Medical Center.
So public hospital.
A public hospital. It's crowded, it's chaotic, and apparently the staff was treating his father pretty poorly. PBD is young, he's hot-tempered, he's scared, and he just throws a tantrum.
He's reacting, he's playing that amateur game.
Yeah.
He thinks screaming is going to solve the problem.
Exactly. He's screaming, "You can't treat him like this. Do you know who he is?" And security comes over and physically kicks him out.
Wow.
And as he's standing there in the parking lot, just shaking with rage, a total stranger looks at him and delivers a line that basically changes his entire genetic code.
What did he say?
The guy says, "Listen, if you had money, you could get better insurance, you could get better doctors, you could go to Cedars-Sinai, but you didn't pay for this. Taxpayers are paying for this."
Oh, that is a brutal, cold bucket of water.
It's devastating. PPD says he went to his car and just cried for 30 minutes. But, and this is the absolute key, that anger turned into shame. He realized he was out clubbing, partying, living for the weekend, acting like a big shot, while his dad was getting substandard care because Patrick wasn't successful enough to protect him.
And that shame, it killed the party boy Patrick and birthed the CEO.
Yes, he used that pain. He calls it future truth. He decided right then and there that he would never, ever be in that position again. He essentially weaponized his own shame to drive his work ethic.
The source material mentions other examples of this pain as fuel idea, too.
Yeah.
It seems to be a common thread among the hyper-successful, like Elon Musk's father telling him he'd never make it.
Or Barbara Corcoran, she's famous from Shark Tank now, right? Built this huge real estate empire. But her origin story, her boyfriend, who was also her business partner, dumped her for her assistant.
Ouch.
And on his way out the door, he looked at her and said, "You'll never succeed without me."
Wow. That is the ultimate mic drop, but in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, she picked that mic up. She sold her firm for $66 million. She says that every single time she felt tired, every time she wanted to quit, she heard that guy's voice in her head.
That's incredible.
PBD even mentions Michael Jordan inviting Leroy Smith Jr., the guy who beat him out for the varsity spot in high school, to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
That is a level of petty that I almost admire. Imagine holding on to a grudge from high school all the way to the Hall of Fame.
But see, it's not just petty, though. It's strategic. It's using a hater as a battery pack.
Oh.
TBD suggests you shouldn't run from the haters or the people who doubt you. You should archive them. Keep a list. So when your internal motivation runs low because passion always fades, you open that archive and use the anger to push through the wall.
Speaking of visualizing things, we have to talk about the Dead Mentors painting. This is such a visual example of knowing yourself and setting that future truth.
Oh, yeah.
PBD commissioned a painting of his personal board of directors.
This is such a great exercise in visualization that goes way beyond just, a vision board with some magazine clippings. He literally had an artist paint him sitting at a table with people who could never, ever be in a room together. It's a conceptual dinner party.
Okay, so who's at the table?
It's a very eclectic mix, which tells you a lot about how PBD thinks. You've got Tupac Shakur, the rapper and poet, whispering in his ear.
Interesting.
You've got Abraham Lincoln, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr. leaders who changed the world. You've got Einstein for intellect, Milton Friedman for economics, even Ayrton Senna, the Formula One driver, representing speed and precision.
It sounds a bit eccentric, doesn't it?
Mhm.
I mean, Tupac and Milton Friedman sharing a drink.
It is eccentric, but look at the function of it. It creates an environment that forces you to think bigger.
Yeah.
If you are sitting in your office staring at Einstein and Lincoln, you're probably not going to obsess over some petty email dispute with a vendor.
Right.
You're going to ask, what would they do? How would they handle this crisis? It anchors him to his future truth.
Future truth. That's a
Right.
term he uses to describe living in a reality that hasn't actually happened yet.
Yes. And it's distinct from fake it till you make it. Faking it kind of implies deception. Future truth implies inevitability.
Okay, how so?
He uses the example of Thomas J. Watson at IBM. Watson had a picture of what IBM would look like before it was a great company. He decided that they had to act like a massive corporate giant, wear the suits, have the protocol, even when they were still small.
Act the part before you have the part.
Exactly. If you want to be a grand master, you have to start moving the pieces like one long before you have the title.
So move one is figuring out who you are, acknowledging your spectrum, and then using your pain to drive you there. But that leads to a very practical fork in the road. Section 2 of our deep dive, the career fork, entrepreneur versus intrapreneur.
This is such a critical distinction that I wish more people talked about in business schools. Society pushes this myth of the ladder, go to school, get the job, climb the corporate ladder. Or, on the flip side, we have the myth of the founder, that if you aren't the CEO, you're somehow a failure. PBD just challenges this binary thinking completely.
He talks about the intrapreneur. I love this concept. It seems like the best of both worlds for the right kind of person.
It really is. An intrapreneur is someone who acts like an owner within a company. They have the urgency, the innovation, the drive of a founder, but they operate within an existing ecosystem.
So they don't have to put up the capital risk.
They protect the brand, they respect the capital risk the founder put up. But here is the kicker. They can become incredibly wealthy without the sleepless nights of wondering if payroll is going to clear.
The prime example here is Steve Ballmer. Okay.
Steve Ballmer is the patron saint of entrepreneurs. He was employee number 30 at Microsoft. He didn't write the code. He didn't start the company in a garage. But he treated it like it was his own. He drove sales. He drove strategy. He eventually became CEO, and his net worth hit nearly $60 billion, richer than many, many famous founders. And he bought the LA Clippers for $2 billion cash.
That is a very strong argument for not quitting your day job if you're in the right environment. You can win big without being the name on the door.
Key phrase right there, if you're in the right environment. PBD points out that entrepreneurship works best when the company culture actually supports it.
Like Google's 20% rule.
Exactly, Google's 20% rule, where they encouraged employees to spend 20% of their time on their own creative projects. That led to Gmail and AdSense. Those were huge entrepreneurial wins.
But there's a warning here, too. You can't be an entrepreneur just anywhere. PBD tells a story about his time at an insurance firm before he went out on his own. He tried to be an entrepreneur.
He did.
He sent a 16-page letter to management with ideas on how to improve the company.
And he ran into a brick wall. He calls her Katie in the book. She was a manager who just shut him down. She represented the aristocrat stage of a company. You know, the stage where a company stops innovating and just starts protecting the status quo. She didn't want a 16-page letter from some salesperson. She wanted him to get back on the phones. And his point is, if you are an entrepreneur in a company run by Katie's,
You gotta leave.
you have to leave. You will die on the vine there.
And that's what forced him to become an entrepreneur. He realized his future truth couldn't happen under Katie, so he left. But he didn't just open a copycat business. He found his blue ocean.
Right. Blue ocean strategy is the idea of finding a market where you have an inherent advantage rather than just fighting in the red ocean that's full of sharks and blood.
So what was his blue ocean?
When PBD launched his agency, He looked at the insurance industry, and it was dominated by, to be blunt, 57-year-old white men who played golf and did not use social media.
So PBD looks at this demographic and sees a massive gap.
A huge gap. He realized they were ignoring massive segments of the population, so he targeted millennials, Latinos, and women. He used social media aggressively, which the old guard just thought was a fad. And he realized that while car insurance is bought, because you have to have it, life insurance is sold usually face-to-face. It requires trust. So he leveraged diversity in a way his competitors weren't.
How so?
He put Latino agents in Latino households. He didn't try to beat the old guard at their own game. He completely changed the board.
That segues perfectly into move 2. Master the ability to reason. Because once you're in the game, whether as an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, problems are going to hit you in the face constantly.
Constantly.
And this is where that grandmaster separation really happens.
And this is where PCD really shines in terms of like tactical advice. He frames success not as the absence of problems, because problems never ever stop, but as the ability to process problems effectively.
He admits he suffered from panic attacks for 18 months early in his career.
Which is surprisingly vulnerable for a tough guy business book, you know?
It is. But he realized the root cause of the panic wasn't the workload, it was indecision. It was the inability to process the data. He was lying awake at 3 a.m., just replaying scenarios over and over. And that is the hallmark of the amateur mind.
Right. The amateur blames others, or they escape, they go to the bar, they scroll Instagram, they avoid the issue. The grandmaster stops and asks, how did I co-create this?
How did I co-create this? That is a heavy question. It sounds a little like victim blaming yourself, but it's actually empowering.
It forces radical responsibility. Even if someone steals from you, the brandmaster asks, okay, why did I hire them? Why didn't I have checks and balances in place? Why did I trust so easily?
So once you take responsibility, you can solve it.
Yes. If you blame the other guy, you're powerless. PCD offers a specific methodology for this called Solve for X.
He treats business problems like they're algebra.
It's a great analogy. In algebra, you have an unknown variable, X. And until you solve for X, the equation just doesn't work. In business, X is the root cause. He says you have to investigate the urgency, determine who is needed, but most importantly, ask why, until you hit the absolute bottom.
Let's use the example from the book. He talks about a salesperson leaving. The surface reason what the amateur thinks is X is just money.
Right. The amateur says, oh, they want more money, and just throws a bonus at them. But if you solve for X, if you dig deep, you might find they left because the compensation plan favored mediocrity. Maybe they were working twice as hard as the guy next to them, but getting paid pretty much the same. And that was caused by a disconnect between the sales director and the CFO.
So if you just throw money at the problem, you haven't solved for X at all. You've just put a Band-Aid on a broken bone. The bone is still broken.
Exactly. You have to fix the comp plan and the management communication. That is solving for X.
To help with the math of these decisions, he introduces a formula he calls ITR: investment, time, return. This seems like something our listeners could write on a Post-it note today.
This is the math behind the decision. Every single decision has a cost.
How much cash or, political capital does this cost?
You're willing to implement.
What is the financial yield?
There's that great example about the insurance processing software. I think this illustrates it perfectly.
Right. So his COO wanted to spend $1 million on software to speed up application processing. PBD looks at the ITR.
$1 million, that's high.
18 months. That's long. And initially, the software only saved $50,000 a year in labor.
Which sounds like a terrible deal. That's a 20-year ROI. An amateur says, no way too expensive.
On the surface, yes.
Yeah.
But PBD says you have to factor in the velocity of the return and the growth of the company. That's the art of the math.
Okay.
If the company grows at its projected rate, say 30% or 40% a year, that $50,000 in savings compounds. As the volume goes up, the savings go way up. And suddenly the ROI drops to under 5 years. Plus, faster processing means happier agents, which means more sales.
So an amateur looks at the price tag. A master looks at the velocity of the return.
That's it.
He also talks about offense versus defense in decision-making. This seems crucial for keeping your sanity.
Offense decisions are about making money sales, marketing, expansion. Defense decisions are about protecting money legal, compliance, HR. PBD shares this wild story about being sued by a massive competitor, Aegon, just 5 weeks after he launched his company.
Talk about a check moment. They tried to strangle him in the crib.
Oh yeah, it was an attempt to crush him before he could even stand. So he had to decide. fight a years-long legal battle to prove he was right, which is defense,
Mm-hmm.
or settle, pay a huge check, and get back to building the business, which is offense.
And his ego must have just been screaming, "Fight, we're innocent."
Of course.
Mm.
But he realized that fighting the lawsuit would drain his energy and his focus for 3 years. He would win the court case, but lose the business.
Settled.
He settled. He wrote a check he couldn't really afford. He bought his peace of mind. By settling, he freed himself up to go back on offense. He looked 5 moves ahead and saw that winning the lawsuit was actually a trap.
That is so tough to do. It requires suppressing your ego for the sake of the strategy.
Ego is the enemy of strategy. That's the recurring theme here, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so we know who we are. We know how to reason and process issues. Now we need people. Move 3. Master building the right team.
And here, PBD just dismantles the solopreneur myth. He says you simply cannot scale alone. You can make a living alone, sure. You can be a freelancer. But you cannot build an empire.
Right. Even the solo geniuses like Steve Jobs had Wozniak, Bill Gates had Paul Allen.
Absolutely. And he shifts the perspective on recruiting. It's not, I need an employee to do a job. It's, I need to sell you on why your life is better with me. He asks the listener to consider this. How does someone's life improve by associating with you? If you can't answer that, you can't recruit top talent. You're just offering a paycheck, and someone else can always offer a bigger paycheck.
You have to offer a vision.
A vision. And interestingly, he notes that you have to re-recruit your top talent constantly. Because if they're good, you better believe headhunters are calling them every single week. You have to keep reminding them why they're on your ship.
He also brings back this kind of mob analogy, the consigliere. We talk about dead mentors, but in real life, you need a living, breathing consigliere.
Yes, a trusted advisor who balances your temperament. PBD admits he is high energy, maybe a bit impulsive. He's the gas. So he needs someone who is the brake. He needs a calm advisor who can slow him down and say, hey, have you thought about this?
The example of Patty McCord at Netflix is fantastic here. She was the chief talent officer. Reed Hastings is the CEO. And she tells him to his face, stop being a geek engineer and be a leader.
I mean, that is the value of a consigliere. They are the only ones brave enough to tell the emperor he has no clothes.
Right.
Or in this case, that the CEO is hiding in the code instead of leading the troops. You need someone who balances your blind spots. If everyone around you is just a yes man, you are flying completely blind.
But trust isn't blind. This brings us to the Donnie Brasco warning.
Another great pop culture reference. Donnie Brasco was the FBI agent who infiltrated the mob for 6 years. He sat at their tables, he ate their food, he became one of the guys.
And he took them all down.
He took them all down.
So what's the lesson for a CEO? Assume everyone is an FBI agent. That sounds like a really paranoid way to live.
It's not about paranoia. It's about verification. The lesson is, blind trust is negligence. PBD advocates for trust but verify. Background checks, probation periods, due diligence. He says you don't know if your right-hand man has a gambling problem or a personal crisis that could sink the company unless you investigate. You can't just rely on a gut feeling when the keys to the castle are at stake. You owe it to the rest of the team to vet the new guy.
And once you have these people, you have to keep them. This leads to the concept of golden handcuffs.
This is all about compensation. If you want people to act like owners, you have to treat them like owners.
Yeah.
That means equity. But PBD warns, don't give it up on the first date.
Right. You don't hand over 5% of the company just because you like someone.
Correct. You use a vesting period, let's say 2 years. If you stick with us and you hit these targets, you unlock this much stock. It aligns incentives. It forces them to think long term.
He breaks down the math of generosity.
Yeah, and this is so key. He says if paying a guy a $250,000 bonus results in $500,000 of growth, you make that trade every single time, no questions asked.
It sounds obvious, but so many owners have a scarcity mindset. They hate writing that big check, even if it made them money. They look at the check as a loss, not a commission on a win.
That's the amateur move again, looking at the expense line instead of the profit line.
So the flip side of building a team is knowing when to subtract from it. Firing. This is the hardest part of business for most people. PBD has a strategy for this too. Fire gently.
This is surprisingly empathetic for a guy who talks so much about war and strategy. He says, do not burn bridges. The world is small. That ex-employee will talk. He treats it like a breakup.
Okay.
It's not a debate. You don't argue about why they're failing. You just state that it isn't working out.
The story of Hoot is the perfect illustration of this.
Hoot, the assistant, by all accounts, a terrible assistant. Disorganized, ineffective, probably lost the keys to the office. PBD had to fire him. It was inevitable. But he didn't scream at him. He sat him down and said, "Hoot, you are a wonderful human being. You are just a terrible assistant."
That is refreshingly honest.
It is, and PBD knew Hoot loved surfing, so he encouraged him to go chase that, go be a surfer. Hoot ended up traveling the world surfing. He wasn't a bad person. He was just in the wrong seat on the bus.
And firing him gently allowed him to find the right seat, just not on PBD's bus.
And because it was handled with dignity, Hoot didn't go out and badmouth the company. Win-win.
So we've covered knowing yourself, reasoning through the math of decisions, and building and maintaining the team. PDD's book obviously goes into strategy and power plays in later sections, moves 4 and 5, but these 3 really seem to be the bedrock.
They are the internal work. You can't execute a complex market strategy, which is move 4 or outmaneuver a giant competitor. Move 5 if you don't know who you are, if you can't process a crisis without panicking, and if your team is leaking talent. These 3 moves are the foundation of the skyscraper.
It really does all come back to that chess analogy, doesn't it? The amateur sees firing an assistant as an annoyance. The grandmaster sees it as a necessary move to clear the board for a better piece. Executed with enough grace that it doesn't cause chaos in the locker room.
Precisely. It's all about impulse control. The amateur reacts to the pain of the moment, the anger, the ego, the fear. The grandmaster uses the pain of the moment to fuel the move 5 steps down the line.
So, for everyone listening, here is the takeaway.
Okay.
We want you to stop playing checkers today. Stop reacting to the email that just pinged or the minor crisis of the morning.
Right. Just take a beat.
Ask yourself the hard question. Who do you want to be? Are you Sean, who wants the $150 and the baseball coaching gig? Or are you aiming for the moon? Be honest. Use the ITR formula next time you have to spend money. Calculate the velocity of that return and look at your team. Are you building golden handcuffs, or are you just renting their time until a better offer comes along?
And I'll leave you with this thought, connected back to that Dead Mentors painting. If you had to commission that painting today, if you had to put 5 people, living or dead, at a table to be your board of directors, who would they be? Who represents the future truth you are chasing? But more importantly, if you walked into that room right now, pulled up a chair, and sat down, would you have earned a seat at that table? Or would they ask you to bring them coffee?
That is a thought to chew on.